I can give you more power than you ever dreamed of.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we really get into the weeds, looking through sources, research, expert notes, basically giving you the clearest path we can to understanding complex topics.
And today, we're diving deep into a really powerful narrative. It basically dissects the whole social structure, the political mess, and these tragic revolutionary attempts in the Philippines during, well, a really intense period of Spanish colonial rule.
It's quite the stack of material we have here.
Oh, definitely. It's rich, it's complex, lots of tragedy, but also, these shocking details about how corruption worked day to day.
So our mission here is to break this all down for you. We want to pull out the core ways oppression worked, how the system itself was sort of designed to fail people.
Right, and then trace the path of this revolution that ultimately failed, led by this iconic figure who's just consumed by vengeance.
And maybe most importantly, weigh those really tough ethical questions.
Yeah.
The dilemmas faced by people who just desperately wanted change, whether they were reformers or full-on rebels.
Expect insights into some really absurd bureaucracy, profound tragedy, and hidden identities, too. It's quite a story.
What jumps out right away, I think, is how the sources use this one single, really vivid metaphor to show you the whole setup, the entire social and political structure right from the start.
Exactly. They talk about this steamer, a boat traveling the Pasig River, and they call it, straight up, the ship of state.
Okay, so let's unpack that metaphor, the ship of state, because it's really precise, isn't it?
It is. And the first thing they note is that this ship has the vice of smoking.
Right, so it's flawed from the get-go. Inefficient, polluting, kind of sick, really. And this is supposed to be the thing guiding the country.
That's the picture. And then you look at how people are arranged on board, and it just lays bare the whole political reality.
The upper deck versus the lower deck.
Exactly. Upper deck, you've got your comfortable elite, the ruling class, friars, government clerks, people dressed in the fashion of Europeans.
And literally shielded, right, under an awning, protected from the sun, the elements.
Completely.
Yeah.
Physically above all the machinery, the labor, sitting in chairs, comfortable, mostly just looking around, not really concerned with the landscape or, the actual dangers the ship has to navigate, like sandbars.
They're insulated, completely separated from the reality of the country they're supposed to be governing. And that separation seems critical.
That's absolutely critical, because then you look down at the lower deck.
And you see the cost of all that upper deck comfort.
You really do. That's where most people are. The indigenous population, the Chinese traders, the mestizos, packed together.
How's it described?
Wedged in between bales of merchandise and boxes. They're suffering intense heat from the engines, breathing in this pestilential odor of oil.
So the engine room, the power source for the whole ship, is down there with them.
Right. Generating the heat, the power to move the vessel, but the people powering it are crammed in, suffering, and pretty much invisible to the elite above.
It's such a perfect visual for colonial governance, isn't it? The whole structure built on keeping people separate, making sure the rulers don't have to see the suffering that fuels their comfort.
You segregated suffering, willful ignorance.
Yeah.
They're enjoying the ride, enjoying the view, while the majority are basically suffocating below deck, making the journey possible.
And then if you listen to what they're actually talking about up there on the upper deck, it tells you exactly why this ship of state is so messed up.
Absolutely. Any real problem that comes up, anything that threatens the status quo, it gets met with one of two things. Either these brutal, extreme solutions.
Or maybe even worse.
Yeah, these completely bizarre, almost comical, bureaucratic plans that achieve absolutely nothing. Total follies.
Okay, let's start with the extreme side. This character, Simon, the jeweler, he's mysterious, traveling in disguise. British Indian American.
Right, his identity is slippery. But his solutions aren't. When they discuss the problem of the river sandbar, the channel silting up, slowing down trade, a real practical issue.
What's his big idea?
His proposal is just breathtakingly radical. He says, dig a new canal, a straight one from the river to the lake, solves the navigation problem permanently.
Okay. Sounds efficient. Maybe.
But then someone points out, well, that route goes right through several established towns and villages. You'd have to destroy them.
And Simon's reaction?
Ice cold. He just replies, then destroy them.
Wow. So he's basically adopting the colonizer's playbook, isn't he? Just brute force, destroy communities, solve the infrastructure problem. That feels Dangerous. A contradiction.
It's a huge contradiction, and his plan for the labor is just as chilling.
How so?
Well, they say, we don't have enough convicts or prisoners for a job that massive, and Simon just waves it off. He suggests using all the villagers, the old men, the youths, the boys.
Forced labor.
Oh, worse than forced labor. Forced labor where they have to bring their own food and their own tools for 3, 4, 5 months.
That's designed to break people, to starve them.
Exactly. And when someone dares to suggest, oh, wouldn't that maybe cause an uprising?
He dismisses it.
Completely. He gets all arrogant, citing history. Did the Egyptians rebel? Did the Jewish prisoners under the Romans? He just sees the Filipino people as, like, historical labor units. No agency, easily oppressed.
Okay, so that's the extreme end.
Yeah.
What about the other reaction? The bureaucratic folly.
Ah, yes. Governance by incompetence. And the poster child for this is Don Custodio. He calls himself a liberal, prides himself on practical projects, but they're always outside the government structure.
And they always turn out to be
Utterly ridiculous. The classic example is his duck project.
duck projects.
Yeah.
This detail is just gold. It shows how the government preferred these symbolic, totally ineffective solutions over anything real, anything that might actually, require effort or challenge their power.
Precisely. So Don Custodio's grand plan to deepen the river channel, to get rid of the silt,
Was.
to force all the nearby towns to raise huge numbers of domestic ducks, millions of them.
Ducks, okay. Why ducks?
Well, the theory, if you can call it that, was that ducks eat snails. So if you have millions of ducks constantly feeding along the riverbanks, their natural pecking and foraging would somehow dredge the channel.
Dredge the channel by eating snails.
It's met with total stupefaction, as you can imagine.
And the objection that finally gets raised isn't even about whether it would work.
No, that's the genius of it. The objection comes from Donna Victorina. She's this eccentric character obsessed with appearing European.
What's her problem with the ducks?
Her problem is that ballot those fertilized duck eggs, a local delicacy, would become too common, too abundant. It would lower their social status, make them less special.
So forget engineering, forget practicality. The real concern is the social standing of duck eggs.
It perfectly captures the self-absorbed, trivial mindset of that ruling class, doesn't it? Focused entirely on their own tiny comforts and status symbols.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just the officials being absurd. The clergy had their own angle, right?
Yeah.
Mostly about money.
Oh, constantly. The sources point to Padre Cipolla. He's the vice rector of the university. Very high position.
And he's running a side hustle.
A very profitable one. A fine business with buildings over in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, the tenants back on the church's estates, they're complaining constantly about rising rents, about abuses by the administrators.
So the sacred and the profitable are just completely tangled up.
Hopelessly. And then you have Padre Camorra. He's described as a friar artilleryman, so kind of militant, definitely harsh.
What's his complaint?
His complaint is that the locals, the Indians, as he calls them, are starting to haggle over the fees for things like baptisms and funerals.
Haggle.
They're pulling out old fee schedules signed by Archbishop Basilio Sancho demanding transparency, basically saying this is what it's supposed to cost.
And Camorra is outraged by this.
Furious. He complains that, according to these schedules, a baptism costs less than a chicken. It just shows their immense financial power, but also their sheer entitlement. How dare the poor people question the price list?
The monetization of faith itself.
Wow. And if the ship wasn't sinking under greed and incompetence, it was definitely sinking under just pointless bureaucracy, like that commission on footwear.
Right. Tell us about that. They actually sent a commission. Where?
To India, to investigate the best kind of footwear for the soldiers.
A commission to India for shoes. Who was on it? Let me guess.
Oh, it's perfect. A colonel, 2 officers, and, wait for it, the captain general's nephew.
Of course. Patronage, waste. A junket, basically.
Pretty much. And it sparked all these cynical jokes, right? People mocking the incompetence, the huge cost of these fancy shoes.
Especially when, as someone bitterly points out,
the soldiers were born without them. The implication being, why waste money on shoes for people who've never had them? Money that just lines the pockets of the bureaucrats and the nephew.
And this whole ridiculous, corrupt system at the top, it rests on the backs of ordinary people who face just instant, petty, brutal abuse, doesn't it?
Every single day. We see it crystal clear with Sinong, the cochero, the carriage driver for Basilio.
What happens to him?
He's just trying to do his job, driving through a crowded street during a Christmas Eve procession. His carriage lamp goes out, maybe the wind, maybe it ran out of oil, who knows?
And the consequences.
Instant punishment. The civil guard stops him, beats him with a rifle butt, detains him, fines him, all for an extinguished lamp.
It shows how arbitrary the power is.
Exactly. Immediate, arbitrary violence for the smallest thing. It keeps people constantly afraid, constantly subservient. Authority has to look absolute, even if it's just being petty and cruel.
So that's the ship of state. An elite, completely cut off from reality, governance that's either brutal or idiotic, clergy focused on profit, and random violence keeping the common people in line.
That's the suffocating atmosphere Ibarra returns to, and that grinding injustice is the fuel for everything that happens next.
Because Simon, this jeweler, he's not just some rich guy, is he? He's the past come back to haunt them.
He's the ghost at the feast. He is Juan Crisostomo Ibarra, the idealist reformer from the past, presumed dead, who's returned after 13 years away.
And the sources give us this really poignant scene where his identity starts to unravel. It involves the student Basilio.
Yes. Basilio goes on this sort of pilgrimage every year to the woods that used to belong to the Ibarra family, now owned by Capitan Tiago.
Why does he go there?
To visit the neglected and unknown grave of his mother, Sisa. She died there, driven mad by grief and loss 13 years earlier.
And he remembers that night.
Vividly. His mother dying, and then two strangers arriving. One was the wounded outlaw, Elias, who Basilio helped burn on a funeral pyre.
And the other?
The other stranger dug Sisa's grave and helped Basilio. That stranger was Simon.
So when Simon shows up again in the woods, and Basilio sees him without his trademark blue-tinted glasses,
the recognition hits him like lightning. This infamous jeweler, this brown cardinal, this black eminence whispering in the ear of power. It's Ibarra.
But a completely changed Ibarra. The man who wanted to build a school, who believed in education and working within the system, he's gone.
Totally gone. Simon is something else entirely. He's pure, distilled vengeance.
He basically confesses this to Basilio, doesn't he? What's his mission now?
He spells it out. He spent those 13 years traveling the world, making a fortune, and came back not to reform the system, but, in his words, to destroy that system.
Destroy it how?
By making it worse. He's convinced the rot, the corruption is too deep. Only total chaos, total destruction will clear the way for something new. Even if it means, as he says, shedding oceans of tears and blood.
It's incredibly dark. And he tries to pull Basilio into this.
He does. He appeals directly to their shared past, their shared suffering, reminds Basilio how his own brother Crispin was murdered by the system, how his mother was driven mad.
He uses their pain?
Exactly. And he lays out this dark philosophy. He argues that trying to reform things just props up the tyrants, helps keep the rotten ship afloat longer.
And that's where you get that really powerful quote.
Resignation is not always a virtue. It is a crime when it encourages tyrants. There are no despots where there are no slaves.
Wow. So if you don't fight back, you're actually part of the problem. You're enabling the tyranny. That's Simon's view.
That's his core belief.
Yeah.
And it justifies, in his mind, his methods. He tells Basilio frankly, look, I've spent my time cultivating injustice.
What does he mean by that?
He means he's been advising the Captain General, the highest authority, but encouraging the most corrupt, the most oppressive decisions possible.
Why? To what end?
He reasoned that by making the pain worse, by deepening the rot, he'd speed up the system's collapse. He'd push people to the breaking point faster, provoke that violent uprising he wants.
That's a really morally compromised strategy, isn't it? Actively making things worse for your own people in the short term.
It's incredibly cynical. He's willing to sacrifice their dignity, their well-being, just to accelerate the timeline for his revolution.
And this is why he sees the student movement, the one Basilio was involved with, as completely wrong-headed.
Exactly, because they were trying the opposite approach. Peaceful, calculated reform from within.
Tell us about that. What were the students trying to achieve?
Their big project was to establish an academy of Castilian, basically, a school to teach Spanish.
Why Spanish?
Their logic was pretty sound, actually. If they could master Spanish, the language of the colonizer, they could understand the laws better, access legal protections, argue for their rights more effectively. It was seen as a path to progress.
And they worked hard at it, organized.
Very diligently. They even got some support, ironically, from Padre Irene, a clergyman known for being quite cynical.
How'd they manage that?
Let's just say a generous gift helped a team of bays, meaning fine horses, a bribe, basically.
Even reform needs a bit of grease.
Apparently so. But even with that, they hit a wall. Opposition from Padre Sibylla, the influential vice-rector we mentioned earlier, he stalls the petition.
And this is where the system shows its real, quiet genius for crushing hope.
Right. Doesn't always need violence. Sometimes just bureaucracy is enough.
Who gets to decide the fate of the academy?
None other than our friend Don Custodio, the liberal with the Duck Project. He's appointed as the arbiter.
Oh, no. So what does he do?
He's completely paralyzed. Doesn't know what to do. He consults everyone's serious legal minds like Senor Pasta, but also Pipe the dancing girl, seeking advice on a major educational policy from a dancer.
That says it all, really.
It does. And after weeks of dithering, he finally finds his solution, his brilliant move.
Let me guess. More bureaucracy.
Bingo. He refers the petition to the Superior Commission of Primary Instruction.
Which means
It's dead, buried. It's an administrative black hole. The decision is designed purely to let the petition sleep for months and months, lost in endless committees, reform assassinated by paperwork.
And the students who would put so much hope into this, how do they react?
Well, the system reacts first. Right after this decision comes down, these anonymous posters appear overnight. Seditious posters, pasquinades attacking the government and the friars.
Did the students put them up?
It's never entirely clear, but it doesn't matter. Despite all their peaceful, organized efforts before this, the members of the Student Association are immediately rounded up, arrested, branded as dangerous radicals.
So the system provokes despair, then uses the first sign of unrest as an excuse to crush the very people who tried to work within it.
Precisely. And look at who gets punished and how. It perfectly mirrors the unfairness of the ship of state.
Right. What happens to the different students?
Well, Juanito Pelea is the rich kid. He gets suspended, sure, but he just goes off to work in his dad's successful store.
Yeah.
His social standing isn't really hurt.
And Tadeo?
Tadeo actually hated school. He's described as being overjoyed that his eternal holiday has finally arrived. He burns his books, which is, a pretty dark comment on what that education was worth to him.
So some get off relatively lightly or even welcome it, but not all of them.
No, Macarag uses his family's money to get a passport and just leaves for Europe. Pexon gets suspended and decides, cynically, he might as well become a court officer, join the system he couldn't beat. Isagani gets suspended in most subjects, though one professor passes him.
But Basilio's fate is the worst, isn't it? Even though he wasn't really involved with the posters?
His is the most unjust. He gets held in prison the longest. The charge: possessing prohibited books.
Which were?
His medical textbooks, legal medical texts and pamphlets related to his studies as a doctor in training. Nothing truly seditious.
So why him? Why single him out?
The sources are explicit about it. First, prestige of authority must be sustained. They needed to make an example look tough.
And second,
and this is crucial, they needed someone who was vulnerable, someone like Basilio, who was known to be basically the servant or ward of the wealthy, but now deceased Capitan Tiago. They figured there'll be no one to enter a complaint.
he had no family, no money, no connections to protect him.
Exactly. He was the perfect scapegoat, disposable. His arrest wasn't about justice. It was about reinforcing the system's power by crushing someone who couldn't fight back.
So the system didn't just ignore reform, it actively punished the reformers and used their vulnerability against them.
That's the mechanism. And that experience in prison, that utter betrayal, that's what finally breaks Basilio. That's what pushes him over the edge and into Simon's camp, ready for violence.
Yeah, the failure of that student movement, and then Basilio's completely unjust imprisonment. It feels like a point of no return. It drives the story towards its darkest moment.
Absolutely. When Basilio finally gets out of prison, he's not the same person. All that hope in peaceful change, in education, it's gone. Burned away by the injustice he suffered.
So now he's ready to listen to Simon. Really listen.
Completely receptive. And Simon, who meanwhile has been recovering from some mysterious wounds, probably from an earlier failed attempt at stirring things up.
He reveals his final plan. The big one.
Yes, his ultimate device. It's presented as a gift, actually. A beautiful, ornate kerosene lamp.
But it's not just a lamp.
No, the wick, the mechanism. It's packed with dynamite. It's a bomb.
And where is this bomb going?
To the absolute heart of the colonial elite. The wedding feast for Juanito Pelea, the rich student who got off easy, and Polita Gomez, a very sought-after heiress. It's the biggest social event, the peak of the establishment gathering together.
So the lamp is the detonator. What's it supposed to trigger?
It's the signal. The massive explosion is meant to kick off a huge, bloody uprising across the city and surrounding areas.
Coordinated.
That's the plan. It signals Cabesang Tales group, the outlaws, the Tulisans, driven to banditry by injustice.
And also soldiers.
Yes, soldiers that Simoun has secretly bribed or manipulated. They're supposed to attack key points simultaneously. Chaos, violence, overthrowing the government.
And Basilio has a specific role in this.
He does. Simoun tasks him with leading the people, the masses, once the chaos starts, leading them to a specific place, the warehouse of Quiroga, a Chinese merchant Simoun used, where Simoun has stashed rifles and weapons for the uprising.
So Basilio goes from wanting to heal people to leading them into armed conflict. That's a huge shift.
It's a total moral collapse. But to really understand why he reaches that point, we have to look at the suffering that pushes him there. Specifically, the story of Cabesang Tales and his daughter, Juli.
Right. Remind us about Tales. He was a farmer.
Yeah, a decent man. He cleared his own land, worked it, made it productive. But he fell victim to the greed of the friar administrator running the estate.
The rent kept going up.
Constantly. On land, he basically created. It gets pushed higher and higher, eventually up to 200 pesos, which was an impossible amount.
And Tales finally snaps.
He does. He refuses to pay. He stands his ground, patrols his land with a weapon, but then the system finds another way to break him.
How?
He gets kidnapped, not by the authorities, but by actual bandits, tulisans, outlaws, and they demand a ransom. 500 pesos.
So he's caught between two forms of predators, the official greed and the outright criminals.
Exactly. He loses everything, and his daughter Juli is desperate to save him.
What does she do?
She has to raise the ransom money. She starts selling off her few possessions, but the one thing she refuses to sell
is the locket Basilio gave her.
Yes. It's a silver locket, a keepsake from Basilio. It represents their connection, their hope for a future together. She won't part with it.
But she still needs the money.
So she makes this terrible sacrifice. She essentially sells herself into servitude, becomes a servant girl for Sister Pen Chang, a woman known for being extremely pious, but also quite harsh and hypocritical.
She becomes a servant to save her father. That's devastating.
It is. But the tragedy gets even worse after Basilio gets arrested.
Yeah.
Juli is desperate to get Basilio freed, and someone gives her some terrible advice. They suggest she go see Padre Camorra.
The friar artilleryman. The one who complained about baptism fees.
The very same. And crucially, the one who had previously shown an unwelcome interest in Julia. The sources say he'd been winking and laughing, even pinching her cheek. Predatory behavior.
So the advice is basically, go ask the creepy priest for help.
Pretty much. The implication is clear. Padre Camorra could pull strings to get Basilio released, but there would be a price Juli instinctively knows would involve her sacrifice.
Her dignity, her honor.
Everything. She's trapped. Submit to the lecherous priest or let Basilio and her father indirectly languish. It's an impossible choice for a devout, innocent young woman.
And what does she do?
The sources describe this agonizing internal struggle. She fears the priest, fears the sin, fears losing her future with Basilio either way. In the end, facing this awful dilemma, she chooses death. She leaps from the window of the convento, the priest's residence.
She commits suicide.
Yes. And later, that locket, the symbol of her lost hope, her lost future with Basilio, is found left behind in her tampipi, her little basket. Discarded.
That's just crushing, the weight of that. You can see how that would destroy Basilio.
It's the absolute final straw. Any remaining belief in goodness, in justice, and nonviolence, it's obliterated by Juli's fate. When he meets Simoun again after this, he's no longer the hesitant student. He's ready for blood. He's committed to revenge.
Which brings us to the wedding night itself. The setting for Simoun's bomb.
Yeah, and the scene is set up as this display of ultimate colonial arrogance and opulence. Don Timoteo Pelaez, Juanito's father, has gone all out decorating the house.
And the guest of honor.
The Captain General himself. The highest official. He's the patron of the wedding, just 2 days before he's scheduled to leave the Philippines for good.
And Simoun arranged this. The patronage.
Yes, Simoun pulled strings to make the Captain General the guest of honor, ensuring all the highest officials, the richest merchants, the most powerful friars would be there. He even delivers the wedding gift himself.
The lamp, the bomb, which gets placed right on the main table.
Right in the center where everyone can admire it. A ticking time bomb surrounded by the entire corrupt elite.
And Basilio arrives outside. He knows what's inside the lamp.
He does. He's haunted, ragged from prison and grief. He watches the bridal procession, sees Simoun go inside. He realizes the horror about to happen.
Does he try to stop it? Or warn someone.
He tries to get into the house, maybe to warn them, maybe just compelled by the horror. But the porter at the door just shoves him away, looks at his rags, his desperate appearance, and refuses him entry.
The ultimate irony. The system he now wants to destroy physically blocks him from potentially saving its architects.
It's agonizing. He's trapped outside, knowing dozens are about to die.
But then someone else is there. Someone unexpected intervenes.
Yes, Isagani. He was Paulita's fiancé before she dumped him for the wealthier Juanito Peláez.
So he's standing outside, heartbroken.
Completely heartbroken, watching the woman he loves marry someone else in this lavish spectacle. But then Basilio, terrified, finds him, tells him about the lamp, the dynamite, the white, clear light it will emit just before exploding.
And Isagani, what does he do? He must hate everyone in that house.
He must. He has every reason to want revenge, to let them all perish. His own hopes were crushed by the system, by Paulita's choice. But he doesn't hesitate.
He goes in.
He understands the scale of it, the sheer human cost. Overcoming his own pain, his own justified anger, Isagani rushes into the dining hall.
He grabs the lamp.
Grabs the glowing lamp, sprints out, and leaps into the Pasig River with it, throwing it into the water just as it's about to explode.
He saves them. He saves everyone. The Captain General, the Friars, Peláez, Paulita.
All of them, single-handedly. It's this incredible act of, well, moral clarity, maybe? Prioritizing human life, even the lives of his enemies and the woman who betrayed him, over political vengeance or personal despair. It stopped Simon's revolution cold.
Wow. So the bomb is neutralized, but the attempt itself must have sent shockwaves through that elite gathering.
Oh, absolutely. Chaos, panic. But then something even more chilling is discovered.
What's that?
As people are trying to figure out what happened, they find this piece of parchment. Maybe it was attached to the lamp, maybe left on the table, and written on it are these words: Mene, Tekel, Friars.
For writing on the wall.
Okay.
From the Bible, right? The warning to the Babylonian king that his kingdom was finished.
Exactly, meaning measured, weighed, and found wanting. Judgment is coming. And then the signature.
Juan Crisostomo Ibarra.
The name of the dead filibuster, the ghost they thought was long gone. The message is unmistakable. Your time is up, you've been judged, and I am back.
How did the guests react to that?
Pure terror, especially for those who knew the history. Padre Salvi, the priest who was deeply involved in framing Ibarra years ago, he reportedly just swoons, faints, dead away from shock, realizing the truth.
But the general reaction is denial.
Mostly denial and attempts to downplay it. Oh, it must be a joke, a prank in very bad taste. Anything to avoid facing the reality that someone tried to wipe them all out and that it was connected to Ibarra.
And the official narrative has to be controlled, right? What about the press?
Ben Zaib, the journalist character, he immediately tries to spin it. His first instinct is to write this glowing piece about how brave the guests were, how heroic they acted.
But that story falls apart pretty quickly.
Instantly. Because then the real extent of the plot is discovered. They find sacks of gunpowder hidden under the floorboards of the dining area, the kiosk. It wasn't just the lamp. It was meant to be a much bigger, devastating explosion. Mass murder.
So the heroic narrative is impossible. What happens then?
Rumors fly everywhere. People realize the lamp explosion was supposed to be a signal for Cabesang Tales outlaws, for those disaffected soldiers Simon had turned.
And because the signal failed?
The whole coordinated uprising just fizzled out. The groups waiting for the signal presumably scattered when it didn't come. The revolution collapses before it even starts.
Amidst all this panic and cover-up,
Yeah.
is there anyone in the power structure who actually takes this seriously, who sees it as a symptom of something deeply wrong?
There's one significant figure, the high official. He's portrayed as someone perhaps more principled than the others, though still part of the system.
What does he do?
He's disgusted. Disgusted by the corruption, the injustice he's seen, and now this assassination attempt, which, to him, proves the system is fundamentally broken and breeding violence. So he resigns.
He quits.
Quits and leaves. Makes this powerful declaration as he goes, saying something like, before Spain and above Spain is her honor. He connects Spain's honor to lofty principles of morality, the eternal principles of immutable justice.
So he's saying Spain itself is being dishonored by the colonial government's actions.
Exactly. He refuses to be part of it anymore. He chooses his conscience, his idea of Spain's true honor, over his career in a corrupt system. He goes back to Spain.
Is that presented as a genuine moral stand? Or is it too little too late?
That's a great question. You could argue it's too little too late from someone who benefited from that system. But within the narrative, it functions as this rare moment of internal critique, an admission from within the colonial machine that things were indefensible.
Meanwhile, what happens to Simon, the architect of all this?
He's wounded, hunted. He escapes and takes refuge in the remote, peaceful home of Padre Florentino, a virtuous Filipino priest.
But Simon knows the end is near.
Yes. He's taken poison himself rather than be captured. And as he's dying, he finally removes those iconic blue goggles, reveals his true face as Ibarra, and makes his final confession to the priest.
What does he confess?
He lays it all bare, his life of manipulation, how he deliberately encouraged the worst abuses by the officials, like the Captain General, how he fanned the flames of greed and corruption.
Believing this would hasten the collapse.
Right. But he has this devastating realization in his final moments. He admits he fostered the social rottenness.
Without sowing an idea. That phrase seems absolutely crucial.
It's the key to his failure. He generated chaos, anger, resentment, but he never offered a positive vision. He didn't build the moral or intellectual foundation for what should come after the destruction.
What does sowing an idea mean here, then? Education. Philosophy.
It seems to mean preparing the people, giving them the tools, ethical, intellectual, to build a just society themselves. Simon wanted to swap one set of masters for another, possibly led by him, through violence. He didn't empower the people to be their own masters, justly.
And this confession leads to Padre Florentino's response, which is really the philosophical core of the whole thing, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Padre Florentino listens, understands Simon's pain, but he fundamentally disagrees with the methods. He challenges Simon directly.
How?
He argues that violence born from hatred and corruption can't create anything good. It can only produce, in his words, a mushroom from the filth, something misshapen, maybe poisonous, that grows out of decay but isn't healthy itself.
This means matter as much as ends.
Profoundly. Florentino suggests that if God allowed the Filipinos to suffer under Spanish rule, perhaps it was because they, as a people, hadn't yet developed the inner strength, the energy and dignity to fight for their rights justly.
Meaning they weren't morally ready for freedom? That sounds harsh.
It is harsh, but it's framed as a lack of internal moral preparedness. They were still, in a psychological sense, enslaved by the habits of submission or the desire for revenge, rather than acting from a place of true, dignified strength.
And this leads to that really chilling question Florentino poses about the future.
The central dilemma. Why independence if the slaves of today will be the tyrants of tomorrow?
If freedom is won using the same brutal methods as the oppressors.
And that they will be such is not to be doubted, Florentino adds. For he who submits to tyranny loves it.
Wow. That's a deep psychological insight. Submission breeds a desire for domination.
That's the fear. If you learn only the rules of power through suffering abuse, when you get power, you might just replicate that abuse. The cycle continues. Tyranny just changes hands.
So true liberation for Padre Florentino has to come from, what? Moral transformation.
It seems so. A moral foundation that completely rejects the tools of the oppressor, the violence, the corruption, the hatred. It has to be built on something different, something purer. Dignity, justice, reason.
And Simon dies then, hearing this.
He dies. His revolution failed, his methods condemned, consumed by his own poison.
And what about his treasure? The chest full of jewels that funded his schemes.
Padre Florentino takes it, this immense wealth, the symbol of Simon's power, his corruption, the engine of his violent plans, and he throws it into the deepest part of the ocean.
Why?
So it can never be used again for evil. He prays that nature will keep it safe, perhaps until a time when people can use it for truly good, just purposes. It's a powerful symbolic act, neutralizing the power of wealth and violence, cleansing it.
So, wrapping this all up, what are the big takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, we've definitely seen the ship of state in all its rotten glory, haven't we? The insulated elite, the absurd bureaucracy like Don Custodio's ducks, the self-serving clergy, the casual brutality faced by people like Simoun, a system designed to crush hope.
And we saw how it rejected both peaceful reform, like the student council,
and radical violence, like Simon's plot, which ultimately imploded.
We followed Simoun Ibarra's path, driven by vengeance, his fatal mistake being that he tried to destroy without sowing an idea, without building that moral foundation.
And we saw the terrible human cost, the tragedy of Cabesang Tales, losing his land and freedom, and most heart-wrenchingly, Juli, whose sacrifice under unbearable pressure becomes the catalyst for Basilio's fall into vengeful despair.
But there were also moments of, well, dignity, maybe. Like Isagani's choice at the wedding.
Exactly. In that moment, Isagani, despite all his pain and justifiable anger, chose humanity over retribution. That act, in Padre Florentino's philosophy, suggests that maybe the greatest power wasn't in Simon's jewels or his dynamite.
But it's something internal.
Yeah, an internal dignity, a refusal to be morally corrupted, even by suffering. A commitment to justice that doesn't mimic the injustice you're fighting.
Which leaves us with that really provocative final thought, doesn't it? If a society is as broken as this one clearly was, is violent revolution, that chaotic destruction Simon wanted, a necessary evil, a catalyst you just have to go through.
Or does genuine, lasting freedom absolutely require building on a different foundation? A moral one that refuses to use the master's tools, even when it's harder, even when it takes longer.
Because if you don't have that moral core,
then Padre Florentino's fear becomes reality. The slaves of today just become the tyrants of tomorrow. The cycle continues. The sources seem to lean towards the harder path. That true liberation starts with cultivating that inner dignity, the refusal to be enslaved in spirit, no matter the external circumstances. That, perhaps, is the only guarantee against repeating the tyranny you overthrow.